The distress signal came at 300 hours, breaking the quiet night shift aboard the Earth Coalition vessel Dauntless. Captain Hyunwoo was in his quarters when the alarm started blaring. He grabbed his uniform jacket and ran to the bridge, his heart already racing. Something was very wrong. "Report," he called out as he entered the bridge. His communications officer, a young woman named Bo-Ra, looked pale. "Sir, we're receiving an emergency beacon from Research Station Kepler 442b. The signal is weak and breaking up, but I'm detecting multiple life signs going offline." "How many survivors?" Hyunwoo asked, gripping the railing. "One, sir. Just one." The Dauntless changed course immediately. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge for the entire 6-hour journey, refusing to sit down or rest. His crew worked in tense silence around him. Research Station Kepler 442b housed 43 scientists studying alien plant life. Now only one was left alive. When they arrived, the station looked like it had been torn apart from the inside. Massive holes gaped in the outer hull. Scorch marks covered the walls. Bodies floated in the vacuum, frozen in their final moments of terror. Hyunwoo led the rescue team himself, moving through the destroyed corridors with his weapon raised. They found Dr. Ji-soon hiding in a maintenance shaft behind a sealed door. She was covered in blood, though most of it wasn't hers. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't work the door controls. When they finally got her out, she collapsed into Hyunwoo's arms, sobbing. Back on the Dauntless, the medical team treated her wounds. She had 3 broken ribs, a fractured arm, and dozens of cuts and bruises. But the physical injuries weren't what worried Hyunwoo the most. It was the look in her eyes, the hollow, haunted stare of someone who had seen something impossible. It took 2 days before Ji-soon could speak about what happened. Hyunwoo sat with her in the medical bay, offering her water and waiting patiently. When she finally started talking, her voice was barely a whisper. "They came through the airlock," she said. "We thought it was a supply ship. We opened the doors for them. But they weren't there to trade or talk. They were there to hunt us." "Hunt you?" Hyunwoo leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Ji-sun closed her eyes. "They wore armor. Beautiful armor, covered in designs and symbols. They carried weapons that looked old, like ceremonial pieces from a museum. But those weapons worked. They cut through everything." She described creatures that stood nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that changed colors like a chameleon. They moved with perfect grace like dancers. And they smiled as they killed. They smiled because this was fun for them. "They didn't kill everyone at once," Ji-soon continued, tears running down her face. "They let some of us run. They gave us time to hide. They made it a game. I heard them talking to each other in their language. They were laughing. The creature that found Ji-soon had spoken to her in perfect English. It told her that humans were special. It said humans were going to be added to something called the Great Gallery. It said this was an honor. Then it raised its weapon to kill her. Ji-soon only survived because the station's reactor started failing. The creatures left quickly when the radiation alarm started blaring. They took the bodies of the dead with them. Ji-soon crawled into the maintenance shaft and sealed herself inside, listening to the station die around her. Hyunwoo sent all of Ji-soon's testimony back to Earth immediately. He also sent every piece of data they recovered from the station's computers. The security cameras had captured everything. Admiral Tae-yang, the head of Earth's defense forces, watched the footage with growing horror. The alien creatures were called the Velcros. They were a species that had conquered most of the galaxy, not through war but through hunting. For thousands of years they had traveled from world to world, finding intelligent species and turning them into prey. They measured their worth as individuals by how dangerous their kills were. The Velcros kept records of every species they hunted. Earth scientists, working day and night, broke into the data files the creatures had left behind. What they found made everyone sick. 847 species. 847 civilizations reduced to nearly nothing. The Velcros kept small populations alive only to breed more prey for future hunts. But the worst part was the gallery. The Velcros had massive ships that served as museums. Inside these ships they kept the bodies of the greatest warriors from each species they had hunted. Frozen in crystal, preserved forever, displayed like trophies on a wall. The strongest, the bravest, the most skilled fighters from 847 worlds. All dead and mounted for the Velcros to admire. Now humanity was next. The Velcros sent an official message to Earth 3 weeks after the attack on the research station. It appeared on every screen, every device, every display across the planet. A massive creature filled the screens, its armor glittering with jewels and precious metals. This was Chieftain Vextar, the leader of the Velcros hunting fleet. "People of Earth," Vextar said in perfect English, "we have observed your species for many cycles. You are young, but you show promise. You fight each other with passion. You survive in harsh places. You adapt quickly. These are the qualities of worthy prey." The word prey sent chills through everyone who heard it. "We grant you one of your standard years to prepare," Vextar continued. "Choose your finest warriors. Train them well. Make them ready. When we return, the great hunt will begin. Those who fight with honor will be preserved forever in our gallery. This is the highest honor we can offer. We will see you again soon." The message ended. Silence fell across Earth. Admiral Taeyang called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leaders. Hyunwoo attended via video link from the Dauntless. Also present were dozens of generals, scientists, and political leaders. Everyone looked shocked, angry, and afraid all at once. "They're giving us time to prepare our best warriors," one general said. "They think this is a fair fight." "It's not a fight," Ji-sun spoke up from her hospital bed, her voice carrying through the speakers. "It's a hunt. They've done this 847 times before. They've never lost. Every species they've faced has died or been reduced to breeding populations. Every single one." "Then we need to think differently," Hyunwoo said. Everyone turned to look at his image on the screen. Every species they hunted before followed rules. They fought with honor. They met the Velcros as warriors. That's what the Velcros expect from us. "What are you suggesting?" Admiral Taeyang asked. Hyunwoo looked directly into the camera. "I'm suggesting we don't give them what they expect. They're coming here to hunt. They think we'll play their game, follow their rules, fight like honorable warriors. But humanity doesn't fight fair. We never have. We fight to win, no matter what it takes." Back on the Dauntless, Bora was analyzing every piece of data about the Velcros. She worked 18-hour days studying their hunting patterns, their culture, their technology. What she discovered was crucial. The Velcros had never faced total war. They had only experienced ritualized combat, warrior against warrior, with rules and honor codes. Humanity knew better. Humanity had thousands of years of brutal warfare in its history. Wars where entire cities burned, wars where civilians were targets, wars where winning mattered more than honor. The Velcros were about to learn what real war looked like. The countdown began. Earth had 1 year. 1 year to prepare for the fight of its existence. 1 year to show the galaxy's apex predators that humanity was different from every species that came before. 1 year to prove that sometimes the prey has teeth. Exactly 1 year later, the Velcros hunting fleet arrived. 100 massive ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Each ship was enormous, big enough to hold thousands of warriors. They moved in perfect formation, like a deadly dance through space. Chieftain Vextar broadcast his message again. "People of Earth, the time has come. We will begin our hunt on your colony worlds. Send your warriors. Let them face us with honor. Let them earn their place in our great gallery." Admiral Taeyang stood in the command center deep beneath the surface of Earth. Around him, dozens of screens showed the positions of the Velcros ships. He looked calm, but his hands were clenched into fists. Next to him, Hyunwoo waited for the order. They had spent an entire year preparing for this moment. "They're landing on Colony 7, Bora reported from her station. 6 hunting parties, about 30 warriors each. They're taking their time, making it ceremonial." "Good," Taeyang said quietly. "Let them land. Let them think we're playing their game." Colony 7 looked like a normal human settlement. Buildings, farms, landing pads. The Velcros warriors touched down gracefully, their weapons ready. They expected to find human warriors waiting for them, ready for honorable combat. Instead, they found empty streets. For exactly 30 seconds, the Velcros looked around in confusion. Then the satellites hidden in orbit above the colony activated. Tungsten rods, each one weighing several tons, fell from space at incredible speeds. They hit the ground like the fist of an angry god. The Velcros didn't even have time to scream. The tungsten rods vaporized everything within a mile of impact. The shockwaves flattened buildings. The heat melted sand into glass. In 6 seconds, all 6 landing parties were erased from existence. But that was just the beginning. Nuclear mines buried beneath the surface detonated in a precise sequence. Antimatter charges hidden in the buildings exploded with the force of small stars. The entire colony became a killing field designed with one purpose: to destroy every Velcros warrior who landed there. Aboard his flagship, Vextar watched in disbelief as 17 more colonies reported the same thing. His hunting parties were being slaughtered. This wasn't combat. This wasn't honorable. This was an ambush, a trap, a massacre. This is wrong, he roared, slamming his 4 fists on the command console. This is not how the hunt works. They should face us with honor. On Earth, Colonel Mincio sat in a military bunker on Mars. Her face was covered in scars from defending the colony during a previous conflict. She had no patience for the Velcros and their honor. When Vextar sent an angry message demanding to know why humans weren't fighting fairly, Mincio recorded her response. "You came to our worlds to hunt us like animals," she said, her voice cold and hard. "You wanted to kill us and mount us on your walls. You never asked if we fight fair. Here's your answer: we don't. Welcome to war." The Velcros were stunned. In 10,000 years of hunting, no species had ever done this. Every civilization they encountered had met them as warriors, fighting in battles with rules and codes. Humanity threw out all the rules. Humanity fought dirty. Vextar made a decision. If the humans wouldn't honor the tradition of the hunt, he would stop treating this as a hunt. He would deploy the full military might of the Velcros Dominion. He would crush humanity like the insects they were. The real battle began. The Velcros warships were more advanced than anything humanity possessed. Their weapons could punch through human shields. Their armor could withstand most human attacks. They had been building these ships for thousands of years, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Humanity's strategy was simple: build more ships than the enemy could possibly destroy. Every factory on Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies started producing warships. They were cheap, simple, and designed to be made quickly. The Velcros might have better ships, but humanity had more of them. Engineer Da Yun worked around the clock coordinating the production. She was young, barely 30 years old, but she understood something important. Wars weren't won by the strongest, but by whoever could replace their losses fastest. Every shipyard became a factory. Every factory became an armory. Lieutenant Jae-won commanded one of the new attack squadrons. His ships were small, barely larger than fighters. They couldn't win in a direct battle against a Velcros warship. But they didn't need to. Jae-won led suicide runs, ramming his ship's fusion drive directly into Velcros vessels. The explosions tore massive holes in their hulls. "For every ship we lose, we'll build 10 more, Jae-won said before his final mission. Can they say the same? The answer was no. The Velcros were losing ships faster than they could repair them. They had the better technology, but they didn't have the numbers or the will to sacrifice everything. They fought to win glory. Humanity fought to survive. There was a difference. Meanwhile, scientist Hae Jin discovered something interesting about the Velcros computer systems. They kept all their trophy data connected in a massive network. Every preserved warrior, every recorded hunt, every piece of their history was linked together. Hae Jin saw an opportunity. She created a virus, not a virus that destroyed data or crashed systems. Something much worse. A virus that forced every Velcros warrior to watch humanity's history of warfare. The real history. The brutal, ugly, terrifying history. The virus spread through the Velcros fleet like wildfire. Warriors who had only known ritualized combat suddenly saw footage from Earth's most brutal wars. They saw the trenches of the Great War, where soldiers died by the millions in mud and poison gas. They saw cities burning during the Second World War. They saw the resource wars, where humanity nearly destroyed itself fighting over water and land. For the first time, the Velcros understood what they were facing. These humans didn't fight for honor or glory. They fought with a desperation born from thousands of years of killing each other. They knew how to wage total war because they had practiced it on themselves. The psychological impact was devastating. Velcros warriors started questioning their leaders. Why were they here? Why were they dying? This wasn't a hunt anymore. This was just war, and war wasn't glorious. War was hell. Bo-Ra, who had been studying the Velcros for a year, made the most important discovery of all. She found the location of their homeworld. She brought the data to Admiral Tae-yang personally. "Sir," she said, spreading star charts across his desk. "The Velcros homeworld is called Velcros Prime. It's at these coordinates. And sir, it has almost no military defenses. Taeyang looked at her sharply. Explain. They've been the apex predators for 10,000 years, Bora continued. No prey has ever fought back. No species has ever attacked their homeworld. They don't have defense fleets there. They don't have orbital weapons. They don't even have a standing army. Everyone is off hunting or in the fleet. Taeyang smiled for the first time in months. It wasn't a nice smile. They're hunters who never considered they could become the hunted. Exactly, sir. 3 days later, Admiral Taeyang authorized Operation Reversal. Hyunwoo would lead a fleet of 73 ships on a dangerous mission. They would use captured Velcro's navigation data to take a shortcut through something called slipstream space. It was risky. Ships could be torn apart by the gravity waves, but if it worked, they would appear right in the Velcro's home system. We're going to show them what it feels like, Hyunwoo told his crew before they departed. For 10,000 years, they've brought terror to other species. Now it's their turn to be afraid. The journey through slipstream space was nightmarish. The ships shook and screamed as reality bent around them. Some vessels didn't make it. Their hulls cracked under the pressure, and they vanished into nothing. Hyunwoo watched 12 ships die before his eyes, but the remaining 61 ships emerged exactly where they needed to be. They appeared in orbit around Velcro's Prime, and what they saw amazed them. A beautiful world covered in purple forests and silver oceans, cities that looked more like art than buildings, and absolutely no military presence. The Velcro's homeworld was defenseless. Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the Dauntless, looking at the peaceful world below. He thought about the 847 species that the Velcros had hunted to extinction. He thought about the research station where 43 humans had died. He thought about all the warriors frozen in the Great Gallery, preserved like insects in amber. His finger hovered over the weapons control. One button press and he could rain fire on that world. He could do to them what they had done to so many others. Instead, he opened a communication channel. People of Velcro's Prime, he said. This is Admiral Hyunwoo of the Earth Coalition. Your hunting fleet is dying in our solar system. Your warriors are learning what real war looks like. And now we're here above your homeworld with enough firepower to turn your paradise into ash. He paused, letting that sink in. But we're not you. We're not going to slaughter the helpless. We're giving you one chance. Surrender now. Recall your fleet. Face justice for what you've done to 847 civilizations, or we'll show you what it means when the prey becomes the predator. The message sent shockwaves through Velcro's Prime. For the first time in their history, the Velcro's people felt fear. News of the human fleet's arrival at Velcro's Prime reached Chieftain Vextar within hours. He was in the middle of planning another attack on Earth's defensive lines when the message came through. For a long moment, he just stared at the screen, unable to process what he was seeing. Impossible, he whispered. No prey has ever reached our homeworld. No one has ever dared. His second in command, a veteran warrior named Korvan, stepped forward. Chieftain, what are your orders? Should we return home? Vextar wanted to say yes. Every instinct told him to protect his world, his people, his family. But to retreat from a hunt was the greatest shame a Velcros could face. In 10,000 years of tradition, no hunting fleet had ever abandoned their prey. We continue the hunt, Vextar said, though his voice shook slightly. The humans are bluffing. They won't harm innocents. They have shown mercy before. Are you certain, Chieftain? Korvan asked carefully. Vextar wasn't certain at all. That was the problem. These humans had broken every expectation, violated every tradition. They fought without honor, killed without ceremony, and now they stood above the Velcros homeworld with weapons ready. What would they do next? On Velcro's Prime, panic spread through the population. Most Velcros had never experienced fear before. They were the hunters, the apex predators, the ones who brought terror to others. Now they looked up at the sky and saw human warships blocking out the stars. Siltra, the mate of Vextar, stood in the great plaza of the capital city. Around her, thousands of Velcro citizens gathered, all looking to her for guidance. She had always supported the hunts, had celebrated when her mate brought home trophies. Now she realized that every trophy represented someone's family, someone's world. What have we done? She said quietly to herself. A young Velcros approached her. His name was Jin Ho and he worked in the archives. Lady Siltra, the humans are broadcasting something. They want everyone to see it. Siltra nodded and the message played on every screen in the city. It wasn't Admiral Hyunwoo this time. It was the scarred human woman, Colonel Minseo. She spoke calmly, but her words cut like knives. "We could destroy you," Minseo said. "We have the weapons. We have the anger. You've spent 10,000 years hunting civilizations into extinction. You've killed billions. You've destroyed cultures we'll never recover. We could end you right now, and the galaxy would probably thank us." She paused, letting the fear settle in. "But we're not going to. You know why? Because we're better than you. We're going to give you the chance you never gave anyone else. Surrender. Face justice. Help us fix what you've broken. Or refuse and learn what it means to be hunted by something that actually wants you dead." Back in Earth's solar system, the battle continued to rage. The Velcro's fleet was being slowly destroyed, but they refused to retreat. War Master Kreloth, one of Vextar's most loyal warriors, had taken command of a splinter faction. These were the true believers, the ones who would rather die than abandon the hunt. "Vextar has gone soft," Kreloth roared to his followers. "He worries about his mate and his offspring while we face the greatest prey in history. This is our chance for ultimate glory." Kreloth's faction was smaller than the main fleet, but they were fanatics. They didn't care about survival. They cared about honor and glory, and they decided that if they were going to die, they would die attacking Earth itself. Bo-Ra detected their approach too late. "Sir, we have incoming." 27 Velcro ships heading directly for Earth at maximum speed. "Can we intercept?" Admiral Tae-Yang demanded. "Not all of them, sir. Maybe half. The rest will get through." Tae-Yang felt his blood turn cold. Earth's orbital defenses were strong, but not strong enough to stop determined suicide attackers. "Sound the evacuation alarm. All major cities, get people to shelters now." On Earth, sirens began to wail. People ran for the underground bunkers that had been prepared during the year of preparation. But there were too many people and not enough time. Millions lived in cities like Seoul, Tokyo, and New York. They couldn't all reach safety. Bo-Ra coordinated the defense from her station. She watched the screens, making impossible decisions. Which ships to intercept first? Which cities to protect? Every choice meant saving some people and condemning others. Her hands shook as she gave the orders. "Intercept the ships heading for Tokyo and New York," she said, her voice barely steady. "Redirect all available defenses." "What about Seoul?" another officer asked. Bo-Ra closed her eyes. Seoul was her home city. Her parents still lived there. But the math was brutal. She couldn't save everyone. Focus on the others. Seoul will have to rely on ground defenses. The battle in orbit was chaos. Human fighters swarmed the Velcro ships, trying to stop them before they reached the planet. Many succeeded. Ships exploded in bright flashes of light. But Kreloth's warriors didn't care about their own survival. They just wanted to hit Earth. A massive Velcro's cruiser broke through the defensive line. It was badly damaged, burning as it entered Earth's atmosphere, but it was still functional. The pilot aimed it directly at Seoul and accelerated. On the ground, people looked up and saw the burning ship falling from the sky. There was no time to run, nowhere to hide. The ship hit the northern part of the city at incredible speed. The explosion was visible from space. An entire district of Seoul simply vanished in fire and light. The shockwave leveled buildings for miles around. When the dust settled, 3 million people were dead or missing. Bo-Ra stared at the damage reports, tears streaming down her face. She tried to call her parents. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. Deep down, she knew they were gone. "I'm sorry," Admiral Tae-Yang said quietly, putting a hand on her shoulder. "You made the right choice. You saved more people than we lost. That doesn't make them any less dead," Bo-Ra whispered. In space, the Dauntless was locked in combat with Kreloth's dreadnought. Both ships had taken terrible damage. Hyunwoo's vessel was bleeding air from multiple hull breaches. The crew worked desperately to keep systems online. "Direct hit to port side," someone shouted. "We're losing power." Hyunwoo gripped his chair. "Return fire. All weapons." The two ships circled each other like wounded animals, each trying to land the killing blow. Finally, both ships fired at the same moment. The weapons struck simultaneously and both vessels went dark. The Dauntless began drifting, its engines dead. Kreloth's dreadnought was in the same condition. The two crippled ships slowly spun closer together, caught in each other's gravity. "Sir, we're going to collide," the navigation officer said weakly. Blood ran down the side of his face from a head wound. "Then we board them before we do," Hyunwoo said. He grabbed a weapon and a helmet. "Everyone who can still fight with me, we end this now." 23 humans made it across to Kreloth's ship through a damaged docking port. They moved through dark corridors fighting Velcros warriors in brutal close combat. The Velcros were bigger and stronger, but the humans were desperate. They fought with a fury born from watching Soul burn. Yunwu found Kreloth on the bridge of his ship. The War Master was injured, missing one of his 4 arms, but he still stood tall, weapon ready. "You fought well, human," Kreloth said, his translator making his words understandable. "You are worthy prey." "We're not prey," Yunwu said tiredly. "That's what you never understood. We're not prey. We're survivors, and we're done being hunted." They fought. It was brutal and ugly. Kreloth was a master warrior, trained in combat for his entire life. But Yunwu had something the War Master didn't. He had nothing left to lose. When the fight ended, Kreloth lay dead on his own bridge and Yunwu collapsed against the wall, bleeding from a dozen wounds. "Sir, both ships are failing," one of his soldiers reported. "We need to evacuate now." "Do it," Yunwu said. "Get everyone to the escape pods." "Leave me." "Sir, we're not—" "That's an order," Yunwu shouted, then coughed blood. "I'm not making it anyway." "Save yourselves." "Tell Earth we won. Tell them it's over." His soldiers reluctantly obeyed. They dragged their dead and wounded to the escape pods and launched. Yunwu was left alone on the dying ship, watching through the cracked view screen as both vessels fell toward Earth's atmosphere. Then a transport ship appeared. It wasn't human. It was Velcros. But it wasn't attacking. It docked with Kreloth's ship and several Velcros warriors rushed onto the bridge. "They weren't carrying weapons. What are you doing?" Yunwu asked weakly. The lead Velcros removed his helmet. It was Korvan, Vextar's second-in-command. "Saving you, human. The war is over. Vextar has ordered a full retreat. He's surrendering to your people. We have orders to rescue any survivors, ours and yours." "Why?" Yunwu asked. "Why save me?" Korvan looked at Kreloth's body, then back at Yunwu. "Because you were right. We were hunters. We thought that made us strong. But you showed us something stronger. You fight for each other. You die for each other. That's real strength." They carried Yunwu to the transport ship. As they flew away, he watched both warships burn up in the atmosphere. 2 funeral pyres marking the end of the hunt. Back at Velcros Prime, Siltra stood before a communication screen. On it was Admiral Te Yang, his face hard but not cruel. Behind him she could see human soldiers and officials. Behind her, the entire Velcros government waited in silence. Dr. Jisun stood at the entrance to the gallery ship and felt sick. She had volunteered for this assignment, but now she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The ship was massive, floating in orbit around Velcros Prime. Inside were the preserved bodies of warriors from 847 different species. "Are you ready?" asked Wansik, a young human archaeologist who had joined her team. He looked pale but determined. "No," Jisun admitted, "but we need to do this anyway." The gallery ship had been designed to inspire awe. Every surface was decorated with elaborate carvings and precious metals. Soft lights illuminated display cases that stretched as far as the eye could see. Each case held a perfectly preserved alien warrior, frozen in the moment of their death. Jisun walked slowly down the first corridor, reading the plaques beneath each display. The Velcros had documented everything: species name, homeworld, date of the hunt, name of the hunter who made the kill. They had treated murder like an art form. The first case held a creature that looked like a giant insect, standing upright on 4 legs. Its exoskeleton was bright blue, cracked where the killing blow had landed. The plaque said its name was Clickspeak 7 of the Thalnex people. Homeworld destroyed 3,247 years ago. 3,000 years, Wansik whispered. This being has been dead for 3,000 years and the Velcros kept them like this. They continued deeper into the ship. Each corridor held hundreds of cases. Each case held someone who had fought to defend their people and failed. Jisun saw warriors of every shape and size. Some looked humanoid, others were completely alien. All were dead. In one section, she found a warrior who had been pregnant when she died. The plaque identified her as Shield Mother Creedol of the Kurleth species. She had 6 arms and gray skin covered in ritual scars. Her hands were positioned protectively over her swollen abdomen. She had died defending her unborn child. Jisun had to sit down. Tears ran down her face as she stared at the frozen figure. They killed someone who was pregnant. They hunted a mother-to-be and put her on display. Wansik looked at the plaque again. The Krilleth went extinct 200 years ago. There's no one left to remember her name except what the Velcros wrote here. But that wasn't entirely true. The Velcros hadn't just preserved bodies. They had also kept genetic samples, cultural records, and historical data for every species they hunted. They had documented the extinction of 847 civilizations in perfect detail. It was the most complete record of genocide in galactic history. Back on Earth, Minister Sua faced an impossible decision. She was in charge of deciding what humanity would do with the Velcros people. Some humans wanted revenge. They wanted the Velcros exterminated, just like they had exterminated so many others. Others wanted them enslaved, forced to work rebuilding what they had destroyed. The debates were fierce. Sua sat through hours of arguments, listening to people on all sides. A woman who had lost her entire family and soul screamed that the Velcros deserved death. A philosopher argued that humanity had to be better than its enemies. A military general wanted them put in prison camps. What would you do? Sua asked Admiral Taeyang privately after one particularly brutal meeting. Taeyang looked tired. He had aged 10 years in the last few months. I would kill them all, he said honestly. But that would make us exactly what we're fighting against. So I won't. We need to find a third option. That third option came from an unexpected source. Siltra, the mate of the late chieftain Vextar, requested a meeting with human leadership. She had become the de facto leader of the Velcros after Vextar's ritual suicide, which he had committed out of shame for leading his people to defeat. Sua met with Siltra in a neutral space station. They sat across from each other, two leaders from very different worlds. Siltra looked smaller somehow, less imposing than her species usually appeared. Grief had marked her features. I cannot undo what my people have done, Siltra said quietly. 10,000 years of hunting, of killing, of destruction. How do you apologize for that? How do you make it right? I don't know if you can, Sua replied honestly. Then what do you want from us? Death, slavery? Tell me what price we must pay. Sua leaned forward. I want justice, not vengeance. I want your people to understand what they've done. I want them to help fix it. And I want to make sure this never happens again to anyone. Together, they created the Restoration Initiative. It was an ambitious plan that would take generations to complete. The Velcros would dedicate their entire civilization to bringing back the species they had destroyed. Using the genetic samples and cultural records from the gallery ships, they would recreate the extinct civilizations. It wouldn't be perfect. The new individuals wouldn't have the memories or experiences of their ancestors, but they would have a chance to exist, to have cultures, to have futures. It was more than their ancestors had gotten. The project started with the Thalnex since they had been extinct the longest. Scientists from both human and Velcros teams worked together, using advanced genetic technology to create viable embryos. The first Thalnex infant was grown in an artificial womb under careful supervision. Ji-sun was there when the infant took its first breath. The baby Thalnex looked like the warrior in the gallery but smaller and softer. Its blue exoskeleton was still developing. It made clicking sounds trying to communicate with the scientists around it. Hello, Ji-sun said softly, tears running down her face again, but this time they were happy tears. Welcome back. We're sorry for what happened to your people. We're going to try to make it better. The birth of the first Thalnex was celebrated across Earth and Velcros Prime. For many Velcros, it was the first time they truly understood what they had done. Seeing the innocent infant creature, knowing that their ancestors had hunted this species to extinction, created a profound sense of guilt and shame. Not everyone was happy about the Restoration Initiative. Some humans felt the Velcros were getting off too easy. Some Velcros believed their traditions were being destroyed, and their identity erased. A resistance movement formed, led by younger Velcros who had never participated in hunts, but felt their culture was under attack. The resistance called themselves the True Hunt. They believed the Velcros were a warrior race and that hunting was in their nature. They saw the Restoration Initiative as weakness, as submission to humanity. They wanted to return to the old ways. The True Hunt started small with protests and speeches, but extremism grew. They began sabotaging the restoration facilities, destroying genetic samples and research. They claimed they were defending Velcros' honor. The situation came to a crisis when True Hunt terrorists attacked the main Thalnex restoration facility. They broke in at night armed with weapons. Their goal was to destroy all the work that had been done and kill the newly created Thalnex infants. But they were stopped by an unexpected defender. Korvan, the former war master who had saved Hyunwoo's life, had been assigned to security at the facility. When the terrorists broke in, he stood in their way. "You will not pass," Korvan said calmly. "I have spent my life hunting. I have killed more beings than I can count. I thought it made me strong. I was wrong. True strength is protecting those who cannot protect themselves." The terrorists attacked him. Korvan fought back, but he was older now and outnumbered. He took terrible wounds defending the facility. But he held the line long enough for security forces to arrive. The terrorists were captured, and the infant Thalnex were saved. Korvan died from his injuries 2 days later. His last words were spoken to one of the human doctors trying to save him. "Tell the Thalnex children that one of us was sorry. Tell them one of us tried to be better." His sacrifice became a turning point. Many Velcros who had been uncertain about the Restoration Initiative now fully committed to it. Korvan became a symbol of redemption, proof that the Velcros could change. 5 years after the war ended, there were now populations of 12 different restored species. The Thalnex numbered 300 individuals. The Krillith had 150. Other species were in various stages of restoration, from embryonic development to childhood. The restored species were taught about their history by both humans and Velcros. They learned about their ancestors, their cultures, their achievements. But they also learned about how they had been destroyed. It was painful knowledge, but important. Hyunwoo, recovered from his injuries but now using a mechanical arm to replace the one he lost, visited the restoration centers regularly. He had become an unofficial ambassador between species. The restored beings respected him because he had fought to save humanity, but he had also fought to save them. One day, a young Thalnex named Clicksong Home approached him. She was one of the first generation, now 5 years old and already showing intelligence and curiosity. "Admiral Hyunwoo," she clicked, her translator converting her language to human speech. "Why did you save us?" "We are not your people." Hyunwoo knelt down to her level. "Because you didn't deserve to die. None of your ancestors deserved to be hunted. We saved you because it was the right thing to do. But the Velcros killed your people too. Why help them restore us?" It was a good question, one that many humans still struggled with. Hyunwoo thought carefully before answering. "Because we're trying to build a galaxy where STR." 20 years had passed since the war ended. Admiral Hyunwoo, now in his 60s with gray hair and tired eyes, stood on the observation deck of the Joint Defense Fleet headquarters. He watched ships patrol the space around the restoration worlds. Some were human vessels. Others were Velcro ships, their weapons now used to protect instead of hunt. "Hard to believe, isn't it?" said a voice behind him. Hyunwoo turned to see Siltra approaching. She was older now, too, moving more slowly than before. Her forearms showed signs of age, but her eyes were sharp and determined. "What's hard to believe?" Hyunwoo asked. "That we went from trying to kill each other to working together. That my people, who spent 10,000 years as predators, are now guardians." "People can change," Hyunwoo said. "Not all of them. Not easily, but they can change." The Restoration Initiative had made remarkable progress. 12 species were now fully established, with populations ranging from a few hundred to several thousand. Another 20 species were in active restoration, with the first-generation children growing up in carefully designed environments. The rest of the 847 would take decades or even centuries more. But the work continued. Bora, now director of the Galactic Protection Council, walked into the observation deck carrying a data pad. She looked worried, which was never a good sign. Since losing her parents in Seoul, she had dedicated her life to making sure no one else suffered the way she had. "We have a problem," Bora said without preamble. "A big one." She activated a holographic display. It showed a massive fleet of ships emerging from the galactic core. There were thousands of them, each one bristling with weapons. They moved with a coordinated intelligence that suggested a hive mind. "This is the Drakon Swarm," Bora explained. "We detected them 3 weeks ago. They're expanding outward from the core, conquering everything in their path. They've already destroyed 17 civilizations." "What do they want?" Siltra asked. "Everything. They see all other species as either food or obstacles. They don't negotiate. They don't take prisoners. They just consume and move on." Hyunwoo studied the display carefully. The Drakon fleet was enormous. far larger than anything humanity or the Velcros could field. What's their projected path? Bora highlighted several star systems on the map. They're heading toward the restoration worlds. If they maintain their current trajectory, they'll reach the Thalnex colonies in 6 months. The room fell silent. 6 months to prepare for an enemy that outnumbered them 10-1. 6 months to protect 12 fragile species that had just started to rebuild their civilizations. Send a diplomatic mission, Hyunwoo ordered. Maybe we can reason with them. The diplomatic mission was led by Minister Sua, now elderly but still sharp. She had spent 20 years building bridges between species. If anyone could negotiate with the Drakon, it was her. She took a small ship with minimal crew and approached the swarm fleet, broadcasting peaceful intentions. The Drakon response came quickly. A massive vessel, organic and mechanical parts fused together in disturbing ways, intercepted Sua's ship. The communication that followed chilled everyone who heard it. "We are the Drakon swarm," the hive mind spoke with 1,000 voices overlapping. "We have observed your galaxy. You fight amongst yourselves. You struggle and suffer. You are weak. We will consume the weak and become stronger. Join us or be consumed." Sua had faced down the Velcros. She had negotiated peace between enemies. But the Drakon were different. They weren't individuals. They were a collective intelligence that saw everything as either useful or irrelevant. "We are not weak," Sua said calmly, "and we will not surrender." "Then you will be consumed," the Drakon replied. "We see what you are. Former predators protecting their prey. How inefficient. How wasteful. We will show you true strength." The communication ended. The Drakon vessel released Sua's ship but sent a clear message. In 6 months they would arrive at the restoration worlds. Anyone who stood in their way would be destroyed. Back at the Joint Defense Fleet headquarters, emergency meetings ran around the clock. The Drakon outnumbered them badly. They had technology that seemed to adapt and evolve during battle. They felt no fear and took no prisoners. How could anyone fight that? "We evacuate the restoration worlds," one general suggested. "Get everyone to safety, abandon the colonies." "No," said Click Songhome, now an adult Thalnex and a representative for her people. She had grown into a brilliant scientist and fierce advocate. "We just got our home back. We will not run." Other representatives from the restored species agreed. The Kryleth, the Vorchen, the Thalnex, all 847 species in various stages of restoration, they all refused to abandon their new worlds. They had been given a second chance at existence, and they would fight for it. "Then we fight," Hyunwoo said. "All of us together." The preparation for war began. Da-Yoon, now the chief engineer for the entire Joint Defense Fleet, worked on upgrading weapons and shields. She was in her 50s but worked with the energy of someone half her age. She had spent 20 years building peace. Now she had to prepare for war again. The restored species contributed what they could. The Thalnex shared scientific knowledge that had been recovered from their archives. The Kryleth, even with their limited numbers, sent their warriors. The Vorchen designed new weapons based on ancient technology. Every species, no matter how small, offered something. Even young people joined the fight. Jiho, the son of the late Captain Hyunwoo's nephew, became a fighter pilot. He was only 20 years old but had trained his entire life. He had grown up hearing stories about the war with the Velcros, about how humanity and their former enemies had become allies. "I'm not fighting for just Earth," Jiho said during his deployment briefing. "I'm fighting for all of us. Every species, every world. That's what it means to be Apex." The Drakon arrived exactly on schedule. Their fleet was even larger than initial estimates. Thousands of ships all connected to the hive mind, moving with perfect coordination. They swept into the restoration systems like a plague. The battle began. The Joint Defense Fleet fought with everything they had. Human ships and Velcros vessels flew side by side, protecting the colonies behind them. The restored species, despite their small numbers, contributed their own defenders. It was the entire galaxy against the swarm. The fighting was brutal. The Drakon ships could adapt to weapons after being hit a few times. They learned from every engagement, becoming harder to kill. The Joint Defense Fleet lost ships at an alarming rate. Da-Yoon worked frantically to develop new weapons, new tactics, anything to counter the Drakon adaptation. "They learn from patterns," she explained to the command staff. "We need to be unpredictable, random, hit them with different weapons every time." Jiho led fighter squadrons in daring attacks. He flew through debris fields and used asteroids as cover. His natural instinct for flying made him one of the best pilots in the fleet. But even he could see they were being overwhelmed. On the ground, the colonies were evacuated to underground shelters. Children of the restored species huddled together, frightened but brave. Clicksong Home stayed with them, telling them stories of their ancestors, reminding them why they existed. In space, Siltra commanded the Velcro's contingent of the fleet. She was old, too old to be leading warriors into battle, but she refused to stay behind. "My people were predators for 10,000 years, she told her crew. Today we become something better. Today we protect." The turning point came during the defense of the Thalnek's homeworld. The Drakon had broken through the defensive lines and were descending on the planet. It looked like the end. Then something unexpected happened. The Velcros warriors, led by Siltra herself, formed a defensive wall between the Drakon and the planet. They knew it was suicide. They knew they wouldn't survive. But they held the line anyway, giving the human fleet time to regroup and counterattack. For the hunted, Siltra screamed as her ship took fatal damage. "For those we failed. For those we will not fail again." The Velcros ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But they had bought enough time. Hyunwoo led the counterattack personally, his flagship charging directly at the Drakon command vessel. Around him, ships from a dozen different species followed. Dayun had developed one final weapon, a virus similar to what scientist He Jin had created 20 years ago, but far more sophisticated. This one would attack the Drakon hive mind directly, fracturing their collective intelligence. "Get me close enough to upload it," Hyunwoo ordered. Ji-ho and his squadron escorted the admiral's ship through the swarm. They lost half their fighters in the approach, but they made it. Dayun uploaded the virus directly into the Drakon network. The effect was immediate. The swarm ships began acting erratically, no longer moving with perfect coordination. The hive mind was fracturing, splitting into hundreds of smaller intelligences that couldn't work together. "Now," Hyunwoo shouted, "hit them while they're confused." The Joint Defense Fleet struck with everything they had. Without their coordination, the Drakon were vulnerable. Their ships were destroyed by the thousands. The survivors, their hive minds shattered, retreated back toward the galactic core. The battle was won, but the cost was terrible. Thousands of ships were lost. "Then